Welcome back, everybody. Here we are, episode number 2 of the drive to Dayton, year 2 upon us. Just want to let you know where you can view us out there. We have Twitter account, Instagram account. Obviously, you can catch us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, any basic platform that you listen to your podcast on. Of course, we would love for you to subscribe, like, all those good things to what we're doing here. We're obviously not making millions of dollars doing this, but definitely would appreciate any subscribers, likes, comments, shares, whatever. Just get the word out there that we're providing you the best full coverage of the state of Ohio. Gentlemen, first full weekend of Ohio high school hoops, sprinkled in with some out-of-state flavor. How are we feeling physically after one weekend of hoops?
Absolutely exhausted. Just a long weekend of driving and, just kind of staying in the gym pretty late. I believe I saw 11 games on the weekend, 3 in Friday down in Cincinnati, about 6 games in Columbus on Saturday, and then about 2.5 games last night over at Cleveland Heights.
Yeah,
Roth,
I
you had
did
a similar
14 games.
pass.
Yeah, I went to 14 games. Me and TJ were together for the 3 in Mason on Friday and also the 6 in Columbus on Saturday. And then I headed to the west side of Cleveland, to Baldwin-Wallace University, for 5 games on Sunday for the Cleveland Basketball Classic. So handful of events that we all went to. So I think no better time than the present to start breaking down what we saw this weekend.
Yeah, let's I'll get you guys' thoughts here. Let's start with the Ohio Valley Classic down at Mason High School. I'll throw out some highlights to the people, and then we'll get you guys' takes. Obviously, the big news coming out of there, Richmond Heights winning streak comes to an end against Newport, Kentucky. I'll let you guys talk more about that, but let's just be up front. This was not some stiff that they lost to down there in this event.
Not at all.
Mason got off to a good start down there. Kettering Alder picks up a real nice win to start. That's a good resume win over Hilliard Bradley. Preble Shawnee beats King, Sycamore, Woodward, and then Delaware Hayes got a win over Cooper. I believe that was yesterday.
Went to overtime, I believe.
Yeah, so Delaware Hayes gets a win over a crosstown rival there, Buckeye Valley, and then beats Cooper to get a 2-0 start to the season. Gentlemen, Roth, I'll start with you. Major takeaways from Mason on Friday.
Yeah, really the first takeaway was how legit Newport looks. Obviously, we're an Ohio podcast, Newport right across the river, but they have a couple kids that Ohio high school fans are familiar with. Deshaun Jackson was at Taft, Jabari Covington was at CCPA, and then James Turner is a Lakota kid. But their star, Tay Kinney, he was absolutely sensational against Richmond Heights, just great, a change of pace, a really tough pull-up shooter as well, plays with great poise. So he was big time. And then in the nightcap on Friday, Mason came out very focused. They moved the ball. They hit shots. Ben Menker was fantastic on both ends of the floor. And Mason seems like a deep team this year. It seems like they have a couple guys off the bench who can play as well. So I was impressed with the Comets, who are going to face a lot of tough competition in the GMC this season. Could be the best conference top to bottom in Ohio. Mason looks like they'll at least be competing near the top of it.
Yeah, no, the first game down in Cincinnati with Withrow and Crispus Attucks out of Indianapolis, that was a game that it looked like both teams' first game of the season. So very kind of sloppy, slow start on both sides. A lot of length and athleticism on both sides. I thought Withrow. I mean, they looked the part. A lot of long, talented players. I was really kind of impressed with sophomore Chris Henry, who's an Ohio State football commit. Would very easily be a Division I basketball commit if he wasn't, going the gridiron route. His younger brother, DeMarcus Henry, is only a freshman, but I don't think it's far fetched to say that he's going to be one of the best players in Ohio in a few years. He's a baby. You could tell that kid was still kind of growing into his body, but he's 6'4", he's long. He shot a really, really good ball off the catch and just showed a lot of promise in that game. Crispus Attucks pulled away late. That Newport game and Richmond Heights, I mean, those are two teams that I saw probably about 5 or 6 times during the summer. I think anybody who saw that Newport team, especially in June, they were no slouches. A bunch of tough kids, like Ralph mentioned, a bunch of Ohio ties. It was a phenomenal game. It kind of lived up to my expectations of it. And, quite frankly, Richmond Heights, I still think they're on paper the most talented team in Ohio. But, there are some wrinkles and some adjustments that need to be made. Junior point guard, Derek Barber, I believe he suffered like an ankle or a foot sprain. So you could kind of tell he wasn't at 100%. And to me, he's the main catalyst of that team. I think if Barber's not getting paint touches, creating shots for Winters, Jones, dropping it off to guys like Jeremy Wilson and TJ Crumble, that team looks a lot different. I thought that they struggled at times with, just the pace and the flow. Guys, trying to get acclimated to, the addition of TJ Crumble. It'll be interesting. And unfortunately for Richmond Heights, man, they don't get a whole lot of time to figure things out. Their schedule over the next few weeks is absolutely brutal. I believe they go to this Saturday. They're playing out in a Jeremy treatment event in Philly against Emotep, who is traditionally one of the more talented teams out in that area. Let me see who they play is on the 16th. They play against St. Ignatius at another play-by-play event. They turn around literally the next day and play Pick Central down in Columbus. And then I believe just a few days after that, they take their talents down to Florida for the City of Palms Classic, which is historically probably been the #1 high school event in the country. And their opening game down there is IMG. So, yeah, Richmond Heights, obviously, they still very, very early, but their schedule, man, it is an absolute gauntlet. So,
yeah, it's a good good segue because actually there was a couple things I wanted to ask you. I mean, Tate Kenny, you guys mentioned him from Newport. He's a kid that's been kind of on the national scene for. I mean, if you follow, like middle school, junior high, he's been a name that's been talked about a lot coming up through. It was just kind of going to be where was he going to end up. So no surprise there. Again, I think with Richmond Heights, I've been to the City of Palms before. It's a fabulous event. Richmond, I don't know, they might be a little over their skis in that event, but nonetheless, it will be a good learning experience for them, I believe. You open up with IMG. That's a different level of Power 5 player that they're getting, but that's a monster schedule to start the season. And speaking of transitioning to the All Ohio Showcase, Richmond Heights played a game against another team that has a monster schedule, which is Reynoldsburg, who was playing on their home court in this event, and it was the showcase game of the night of that event. But when you talk about Richmond Heights, it's a little different when you have that national ranking next to your name and a target immediately comes on your back, where you're going to have to, even teams that may be just a slight bit below you, you're going to get everybody's best effort every single night because you've got that number besides your name. And then you're trying to mix in a Power 5 guy, a high major guy, and crumble with a team that had unbelievable chemistry. Like, say what you want about them being in D4, but their chemistry was off the chart last year. Off the chart. Steele, Wilson, I mean, unbelievable chemistry. And then now you're trying to mix another guy in there that is a high level player. That's going to take some time.
Yeah, and I think the one thing about Richmond Heights that made them as special as they were last year was, they had 5 guys that could all either put it on the deck or shoot the rock. So they're spreading you out, all 5 guys on the perimeter, dribble, drive, kicking. I mean, it was a lot to deal with. So when you throw Crumble in the mix, not that, not saying that he's not going to be able to get acclimated or get adjusted, but he's a guy who prefers to go, block to block, short corner in that dunkers area, kind of crash the offensive glass. So just from a pure spacing standpoint, I think it's a much, much different look than what they had last year. So it's just going to take some time. And I think they will be fine in the long run.
TJ, what was so just to highlight, that game closed the night. Obviously, Reynoldsburg comes away with the win. You had Gahanna getting a victory in that event. Newark beat Taft. You had St. V and Pick Central in a Buchtel, Pick North. TJ, general thoughts, anything that stood out from Saturday?
Like I said kind of earlier about the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic, man, you can tell it's the first weekend of the season. But I think you kind of expect that going in. If you think there's going to be great basketball being played on December 1st, so this weekend was kind of the epitome of that. There were some highlights and some standouts. We mentioned Tay Kenny a few times, but man, I don't think we can really give it justice to the performance that he had Friday night. He was far and away the best player on the floor in that game. Like Ralph mentioned, his change of pace is elite for a young guy. And he's like 6'3", he's got these long arms, and he's got that ball on a string. So he's got some wiggle, man. He's real slippery, and he does a lot of things well. And from when I first saw him back in the spring, I thought he was a capable jump shooter. Wasn't really completely sold on it, but I will say the strides that he's taken with shooting the basketball, man, just the confidence and the swagger that kid has is very hard to teach. I thought Jabari Covington, who a kid that a lot of Cincinnati people should be familiar with, having played 2 years at CCPA, he was great too. Very. We were sitting next to Corey. Corey mentioned, his kid's kind of playing 2K, right? He's doing all the, really flashy, but I mean, he was going. I mean, he found the rhythm early on and, was able to make a lot of really, really tough shots. And like you mentioned, when you're, a top 10 or top 25 team in the country, like some national outlets have Richmond Heights, you're going to get everybody's best. People are going to be up for that game. The crowd's going to be into it. And I guess, going to Saturday, I think that game with Reynoldsburg and Richmond Heights said more about Reynoldsburg than it did about Richmond Heights, in my opinion. Reynoldsburg has been a team for the last 2 years that we've all said, man, they're a year away. When, Noah Smith and those guys were sophomores, we knew about all the young guys, that they had coming up. Last year, it was like, man, they got all the pieces, they're kind of lacking a point guard. They just haven't really figured out how to win yet. I think they addressed all those question marks for me on Saturday. The addition of Damon Griffin from Columbus South, I know he's a football first guy, but man, I think he was the best possible thing that could have happened to them. Just a tough nose guard that can get in the paint, make things happen for other players. He can create his own offense. And he's got a sense of toughness and edge to him that I think was much, much needed on that team. Sophomore Jordan Bowens, I thought, was great. He finished with 11 points, did a lot of the dirty work. I mean, he's a guy, I feel like it's hard to find young kids, especially talented young prospects that value possessions and play hard throughout the course of the game. And I think Jordan Bowens is one of those few exceptions. He was great. Jordan Fisher, obviously hit the go-ahead bucket with a few seconds left. And a guy who's just a natural, talented scorer like him, he's made for those kind of moments. And he's a guy that they can rely on. Hey, he might not always make it, but that kid's going to be able to get a shot that he wants and get a shot that he likes pretty much at any point throughout the course of a game.
Yeah, a couple guys who I thought stood out on Saturday. First one is Braylon Morris at Newark. Obviously, Steele Meister is the guy everybody knows about, and he's a great player. But Morris looked like he took a big-time step this offseason, looks more athletic, still confident in shooting the basketball, knows how to play in the Newark system. They ran a backdoor cut for him a few times. He got a layup, got fouled, and he almost put a defender on a poster with a slam dunk attempt. So Morris is a kid who I think could break out this year in Central Ohio. And then another player who hit big shot after big shot is Ronald Taylor for Lutheran East. Seems like every time he caught the ball in the corner, it was going in for 3 points. And he's long, able to make a big impact defensively with his length, got his hands on a couple passes, and also stripped a couple ball handlers. He's a kid who has been a complimentary piece, and now as a senior, he's one of the most important guys on the Lutheran East roster, and he came up huge on Saturday in their victory over Walnut Ridge, making some big shots late.
I think we mentioned it on the last podcast when we talked about Lutheran East and, the state championship weekend a year ago, and how a lot of those role guys, Anthony Bruce, Chauncey Brashers, Ronald Taylor, played probably their best basketball of the year when it counted the most. And I think that was huge for those guys' confidence. Anthony Bruce was great all weekend, both last night against Bill Angela St. Joe's and Saturday in that game with Walnut Ridge. Ronald Taylor, is taking a huge step in his development and his confidence. So I think obviously losing TJ Crumble, it's a big blow, but I think they have more than enough pieces. And definitely a special shout out to a kid, Chris Hill, who's a freshman guard from Lutheran East. It's a tough place to be in as a freshman. You're inserted right into the starting lineup of one of the better teams in Ohio. But man, that kid plays like he doesn't know where his next meal is coming from. He sensational defensively. I thought he had a little bit of nerves early on Saturday, but throughout the course of that game, man, last night, he kind of was able to brush it off, and he was great. I think he's a kid who just impacts winning in a variety of ways, and he's just your typical Sam Liggins kind of guard. That was just hand meets glove in terms of fit. So I think Lutheran East is right there. And I may already be double backing on my pick from a week ago. So don't tell Jones that.
I wanted to ask you guys, I figured this game, whatever the over-under was, take the under. Pickerington North and Buchtel. What's your guys' thoughts? Pickerington North, when you play Pickerington North, it's going to be, I think people have the wrong perspective of how they play. A lot of their games are going to be under 50, especially when they're playing a good opponent. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the reigning D2 state champs, Buchtel.
Well, with Akron Buchtel, it is a much different roster than what we saw last year. Two kids who were with them throughout the summer, Zevin Gadsden, who's been a bit of a high school journeyman. He's played at a few different prep schools, played at Buchtel, left, went out of state, came back, finished his junior year with Akron Firestone, played with Buchtel all summer long, was not on Buchtel's roster this weekend. They had a 7-foot transfer from the North Carolina area. Jabibi Ephraim. He was a major project, but obviously a 7 foot with an elite frame. a guy that can obviously really impact and take up a lot of space at the high school level. So yeah, that game was I don't think that was really a true testament to what either one of those teams will look like in a few weeks. I mean, it was the fourth quarter, and it almost looked like a football score. I think both teams were still just trying to figure it out and trying to get an identity, especially offensively, of who's going to score and when they're going to score. I thought both teams kind of struggled with spacing and just trying to, to figure out. Yeah, it was not a pretty game, but Pig North was able to squeak out what's a pretty good win on paper early on in the season.
All right, let's shift to the Great Lakes Classic. I know TJ, you were tweeting about this game yesterday. Cleveland Glenville against Cornerstone Christian. You had Brush and Lutheran West, and then Lutheran East, I believe, played Cleveland VASJ. I wanted to, before we talked about Glenville Cornerstone, I saw a preview on Cornerstone Christian, and you never know what Babe's going to say. And under the defensive section, it just said, "I hope we play some." And then he was trying to paint a picture of what his team would be this year, and he was talking about picturing Hoosiers. You had Jimmy Chitwood, and then the rest of the crew. Is that an accurate picture of what this Cornerstone Christian team is this year?
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty spot on. Babe is nuts. But that was actually a really fun and entertaining game. Unfortunately, Quinn Turtle Kwasniak fouled out with like about 3.5 minutes or so left in the game. There were some questionable foul calls, including a technical that just kind of didn't go his way. And I think that was just kind of completely changed the course of the game. Senior Owen Pugh, who's a point guard for Cornerstone, tried his best to kind of rally the troops. He made a few big plays down the stretch, but quite frankly, it just, wasn't enough. Glenville senior Demetrius Rivers was actually pretty impressive. I believe he finished with around 19 points. They had a few other guys who just made a lot of timely shots. But I think the one takeaway from that game was I think a lot of people in the Cleveland area weren't quite familiar with Turtle Kwasniak's game. But I mean, he had 28 points at halftime. He had 5 threes in the opening quarter. And he was a guy he just put on the show. The kid's got a lot of this kind of swagger to him, and he can flat out shoot the basketball. Say what you want about Babe Kwasniak, but I mean, he's one of the best coaches we have here in Ohio. And I think just, a lot of the sets and plays he was able to run to kind of free, Turtle up for some really good looks. And that team's going to be fun to watch, regardless of the talent. I think they had a much better supporting cast last year. I think it's a very different look for them, but still a competitive game against a Glenville team that's going to compete with a lot of teams in the area. Right after that was the Brush Lutheran West game. That was one of the games that I chose last week for, just to kind of for fans to keep an eye on. And it was pretty even, I would say, for about a half. And then that third quarter, Lutheran West kind of, turned the corner. The transfer Tino from Hudson was great. Hit a lot of really big shots. They have a sophomore who I saw a little bit last year on junior varsity, a kid named Kendall Compton. He was about 6'3" a year ago. He stands at like a legit 6'5" right now. But he just kind of gives them another long, lanky, skilled body. Made a lot of shots. Obviously, you have the Meyer twins. I thought Josh Meyer really kind of improved. He was a kid last year who was capable of playing inside out, but I think he's taken a big step in terms of his shot making, made a lot of big threes down the stretch. And I think Lutheran West they're still my pick in Division II. I know it's early, and I think they kind of showed that against a pretty talented Brush squad. Senior Arnell Evans, who was a kid I saw a little bit in the fall. I know he transferred in from Cleveland Central Catholic, whether it was this year or last year, I don't quite remember, but I mean, just a really athletic, gritty wing. He finished, I believe, with 18 points, including a really big lob to start the game. It was a lot of fun. And then the nightcap was Villangela St. Joe's and Lutheran East. Joe's has a lot of intriguing underclassmen. They have a junior named Sean Shanker, I believe is his name. You want to talk about some of the top shooters in Ohio? I think that kid's name's got to be on the list. Super savvy, smart, is a really polished floor game. Doesn't need much space or time to get off a shot at all. So that was fun. I think Villangela St. Joe's came out with a lot of energy, but ultimately I just think the talent, was just too much for Lutheran East. They pulled away. They were up about 14 points or so at halftime, ended up winning that game pretty big. Senior Jesse McCullough, who I know we're going to talk about later in the show, he's been great so far to open the season.
Yeah, just a couple of closing notes on that. Cleveland Glenville still obviously not at full strength once they get some of their football guys back. Congratulations, Coach Ginn, back-to-back state championships in football. That is not an easy job. But
they have a sophomore guard named Theo Castro,
yep,
who made a splash last year as a freshman. Unfortunately, he suffered, I believe, a minor knee injury in the preseason. He's going to miss some time for them, but I've heard from a few different people now that he will be back at some point this winter. So I think with the addition of him, you get some of those football bodies back. I think Glenville is a player in Division II.
Yeah, and then Cornerstone Christian, let's not forget, they lose one of their top guards, left to go to Cleveland Heights, I believe.
Yeah, Carter Armstrong.
Yeah, so that changes the dynamics a little bit for Cornerstone, but Babe will have a plan. They'll win a bunch of games this year. He's really good, especially in-game coach, and they're going to be extremely prepared. There's no doubt about it. But let's talk to Roth here. Cleveland Basketball Classic. What happened up there?
Yeah, so the first game at the Cleveland Basketball Classic was Hawken against Medina Buckeye. Hawken has a 2026 duo, Deron Hill and also Gregory Price. These two guys are very talented sophomores. They both played on varsity as freshmen, and they looked very impressive. Medina Buckeye had a couple 2026 kids who started and stood out as well. So they're a team that's probably a year or two away, but they could eventually make some noise. And then St. Edward, they dominated NDCL. St. Ed's senior class is very, very deep. It seems like every single year they have some kids who eventually make their way onto varsity. Guys like Wendell Henry, Brian Sullivan, and Max McClellan are some seniors that most fans will know. But you also have the Kulas twins, Ricky Bussey II, and also Joey Scarpetti, who all were impressive against NDCL. So that's 7 seniors for St. Ed's, who are all college-level players. Then another important game in that event was Berea Mid-Park versus Gilmore. Berea Mid-Park got an overtime victory. They've got a couple seniors committed Division I for football, but also have a very strong 2027 class. They had 4 players on varsity, including Tyson Clay, who had 18 points and hit 2 3-pointers in the fourth quarter and another 3-pointer in overtime to take the lead as a freshman. So he was a kid who caught my eye. And then finally, to wrap up the night, Brunswick dominated Olmsted Falls. And Brunswick is a team that can score the ball as well as anybody in Northeast Ohio. They've got a pair of Division II commits in Quinn Barnett and Tommy Morgan, and also have one of the top underclassmen guards in Ohio in Trey Drexler. So they're a team that fans are going to need to keep an eye on in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, it just feels like Flan does such a good job of developing these kids over the years. And you guys, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like St. Edward is not a place that brings guys in. Yeah, they get kids, to come freshman year, but it's pretty much the same guys from freshman to senior year. And a lot of these guys don't play a lot early, and they just continue to get better and better and better and better. By the time these guys are seniors, they're major contributors on really good basketball teams.
Yeah, I mean, after that 2020 class, led by, Grant Huffman and Tay Blanton, there haven't been a ton of underclassmen guys who have really played a lot of significant minutes for St. Ed's. And he's not getting that same, I guess, high-end talent that we've been accustomed to seeing. But, man, the culture that they have over there at St. Ed's, I think, speaks for itself. I remember a few years ago, I wanted to see St. Ed's during the summer. But during the summer, they don't do many team camps or shootouts or any of these events. So what I did was I drove up to Lakewood. I went and watched a practice, and it was honestly really refreshing, just to kind of see the players lead the workout and just how hard guys were getting after it in the month of June. So I just think it's little things like that he's been able to do, throughout his time there. It seems like he's been there for forever. But I think that just goes to show you, man, like regardless of what they look like on paper, I think it's going to be the St. Ed's is going to be a top 10 team in Northeast Ohio until they don't want to be anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Big win in that event to get the season started. Brunswick, definitely a team that people are going to want to see from a entertainment stand. I mean, I think they're going to be a real fun basketball team for people to watch. Let's move into our players and teams of the week. This will be our first of the year. Whoa! And TJ, let's start with you. Give me your team and player of the week.
For my team of the week, I know I just kind of talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, but I went with Reynoldsburg. I think for them to get that win against Richmond Heights, early on in the season, I think that's going to be huge for them moving forward. I think it gives a lot of those guys, confidence. Like I mentioned, the addition of Damon Griffin was huge. Jordan Bowens, who played, a lot last year as a freshman, I think he's taken a big step. Toby, I'm going to probably butcher Toby's last name, Nawakalo, he was probably my most improved kid over the summer. He didn't play particularly great on Saturday, and I think that the fact that he didn't play well and they still were able to win pretty big, I think that says a lot about just the amount of talent that is on that roster. And like I said, this was a team that a year ago I thought had as much talent as anybody in Central Ohio, but I didn't think they quite, figured out how to play with each other or how to win games down the stretch. I think they answered those questions on Saturday.
My team of the week, I will go with Gahanna. We already mentioned them a little bit earlier. On Friday night, they get an overtime victory at Westerville South. And then probably about 15 hours later, quick turnaround, they play Columbus South in the opening events of the All-Ohio Showcase, and they got a 3-point victory. So 2 tough victories for a Gahanna squad that's getting great production from senior point guard KJ Reynolds.
My team of the week was the Russia Raiders, playing 2 games and 2 nights. They get a rivalry win over Jackson Center, who's under a new head coach this year, but you're going to get the same tough Jackson Center kid. Russia's able to get an 8-point win, and then they blow out St. Henry the following night, 73-45. So state semifinalists from a year ago, Russia's Raiders, could be back for more in 2023, 2024.
My player of the week goes to Braylon Wells over at Pick Central. He's a kid who's had a bit of an up and down kind of high school career, right? Started out as a freshman at Pick Central, made the move to Akron, Buchtel as a sophomore, came back to Pick Central last year as a junior, but had to sit out the second half of the season due to the OHSA's transfer policy. But I thought a year ago he showed some big time flashes, particularly in that game against Centerville down at Nationwide Arena for the Play-by-Play Classic. When that kid is engaged and playing within himself and understands what he is and what he does well, I think he's one of the more physically imposing seniors that we have here in Ohio. He is a major, major athlete. I know he's got some scholarship interests on the football field. I believe he just picked up a Division II offer from Thomas More. He's a kid who, if he continues to play like he did on Saturday, I think he's going to give himself a really good chance to kind of pick which way he wants to go in terms of basketball or football. But obviously, losing, Devin Royal from a year ago, I think he gives them a much needed inside presence in terms of his, shot blocking on the defensive end and his ability to just catch and finish and be a big time lob threat on the other side of the ball.
Look at TJ showing some love to Pickerington Central. It's not always Stubbs repping the purple and white.
Got to switch it up.
Yeah, I don't think many listeners had that on the bingo card, but I'm going to go with Jalen Murphy. This was the one game I intentionally skipped in the Cleveland Basketball Classic recap because I knew I was going to talk about it here. Toledo St. John's had a great season last year, made it to the Final Four, graduated a strong senior class, and that allows a kid like Murphy to come in and go from a complimentary piece to one of their most important players. He scored 27 points, hit a handful of three-pointers in their victory over Rhodes, and looks like he's going to be one of the more productive seniors in Northwest Ohio. So Jalen Murphy is my player of the week.
For me, I don't think there was anybody that numbers-wise was up there with Jesse McCullough this past weekend. 21 points, 10 rebounds, and a big win over Walnut Ridge. And then if this is accurate, this is incredible. 30 points, 20 rebounds, 8 blocks, 5 assists against Cleveland St. Joe. Big fella was putting in some work this weekend. Production was definitely there, and man, if he is going to be that much of a problem, along with guys that know what they're capable of doing on the perimeter and in the backcourt for Lutheran East, boy, throw in the freshman. Oh boy. This team has a chance to, this is kind of even crazy to say, but this team might have a chance to be even more difficult to beat this year when it comes time to that D3 tournament.
Yeah, and they just have a lot of guys that know what they are and know who they are.
Yes.
I thought they played very unselfishly over the weekend. They played hard, they competed, and they know to feed the big fella. And that's exactly what they did. And I thought Jesse made it really easy for him. Whether he was crashing the glass, running the floor, he's really good out of that, kind of short roll where he can catch. He makes really quick decisions. It's kind of like hot potato, man. As soon as it's in his hands, he's either shooting, passing, putting it on the floor. He's obviously the leader on that team. And, I just thought the cohesiveness this past weekend was phenomenal.
One other kid I had him on. I actually had him before. I was like, oh man, Jesse McCall is no way I can't go with him. Ren Sheets of Convoy Crestview had 31 points. I think he followed that up on Saturday night with 15. This is a big Convoy Crestview team. They got a lot of size at that D4 level, and they're going to be forced to be reckoned with up in that area, and could be in contention to get back to Dayton again in Division IV.
I thought he showed a ton of promise last year. He had
a great state tournament last year.
I want to say the state semi game, he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Legit 6'7". He's got a really good frame, and I thought he was good for them down the stretch. I'm kind of curious to see how he's developed over the last 6 to 8 months or so. All
right, just some what we're going to watch this week. Some notable events. You have that Columbus versus Dayton City League teams only here. This is at Columbus South. You got the Holy Grounds Classic at Akron St. V. You got the United Way Classic at Poland. You have the battle in the 7-4-0 at Shawnee State. Shout out to Roth. Rich Kid Memorial Classic, and that will be at Centerville. Regular season game, jumping off the chart this week, would be Reynoldsburg. This game is on December 5th. Reynoldsburg at Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's. Gentlemen, thoughts on these events coming up this weekend?
I love the idea of, the Columbus versus Dayton City League that Coach Spears put together over at Columbus South. I think a lot of the times, especially over the last few years, there's so many of these, showcase type events. One thing I do on my website is I list all of the events where you can see more than 2 games along with their schedules. And it seems like every year that list grows and grows and grows in terms of the amount of schools that want to host these type of events. I think it's pretty cool that we get something for a little bit of everybody. You got some Central Ohio stuff. You got a few Northeast Ohio events. You got the Rich Kid Classic on Sunday. A few games that I'm looking forward to that are sprinkled throughout these. Obviously, the Moeller St. V game on the 9th. That's a game that I typically see almost every year, especially when it's at Akron St. V. 2, obviously, the most well-coached teams in the state, probably both guys in the top 5. I think it'd be hard to argue against that. Lutheran West against Frederick Douglass out of Georgia. I was able to kind of look on Max Preps today and just kind of preview their roster, and they don't have a guy in the starting lineup under 6'3". So they're a team out of the Atlanta area who I think is going to probably be a pretty good test for Lutheran West. Lutheran East plays Holy Name. So that's a really good D2, D3 matchup. Holy Name Junior Max Ballin had a pretty big game over the weekend. I believe they played Painesville Riverside. He finished with 20-plus points. The United Way Classic is just 3 games, 3 boys games over at Poland Seminary. You have Girard against Hickory out of PA, Canfield against Youngstown Ursuline, and Poland Seminary against Youngstown Boardman. Youngstown Ursuline is a team, obviously, when we think of Northeast Ohio, we think of Cleveland and Akron. I think that Youngstown Warren area oftentimes gets lost in the sauce. But Ursuline has 3 really good freshmen who all play significant minutes. They have a junior guard, Deshaun Will, who played a lot last year as a sophomore. Then you got the big fella in the middle. I think with Ursuline and those guards, man, Jalen Gunther, I saw had a monster game to start the year. I know that was a kid that Stubbs saw over the summer at a showcase and was really high on him. Ursuline is a team that definitely to watch in Division II, not only this year, but, in the coming years. The battle in the 7-4-0, I believe that's where you're going to be at, Rob?
Yeah, I'll definitely be there on Saturday. Not sure if I'll be making the trip for a second straight day on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think as far as Southeast Ohio, and there's even some Central Ohio teams in there with Bishop Hartley, New Albany, Olentangy Liberty. I think and Harvest Prep plays that following day as well. I think that's if you want to see Southeast Ohio basketball, I think that's your best bet. I mean, you get almost all the big names down there. When I'm looking at it, I see a lot of familiar teams outside of maybe a Berlin Highland who's not in the event. Trying to think what else. You got the Rich Kid Memorial Classic on Sunday. 2 games that I'm looking forward to. Chaminade Julian against Pick Central. And then also you have Kettering Alta against Dayton Dunbar. I'm really curious to see how this Alta team looks, especially after picking up a big win against Hilliard Bradley. So I will be in attendance there on Sunday, and I'll be spending Saturday at Akron St. V for the Holy Grounds Classic.
Roth, did you want to talk a little bit more about the games there at in the 7-4-0?
Yeah, so they were both of my games of the week were involved in there. You start off the event, Bishop Hartley against North Adams. North Adams lost a heartbreaker to Fairland, who is another team at this event, in overtime, 68-66 to open their season. Bishop Hartley's a team I saw at the scrimmage, obviously led by the Callaway brothers. So they're going to be a tough challenge for North Adams squad that won a district title last year. Olentangy Liberty makes the trip down to the border, and they're going to play a Huntington squad that comes across the Ohio River, and they are very, very talented, can score a lot of points in West Virginia. So that should be a pretty exciting game. Then my game of the week, Minford versus New Albany. Minford led by the 2025 duo of Miles Montgomery and Bennett Kaiser. They're going to take on Bud that just has a lot of pieces. They were impressive in a season opening win. Kind of curious to see how New Albany 2026 wing Marco Matucci, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's a kid I'm pretty excited to see. And then to wrap up the night on Saturday, you have South Point going up against Ashland, Kentucky. South Point led by Caleb Lovely. They're another team that won a district title last year. They take on an Ashland team that is led by Liberty commit Xander Carter. So should be a pretty competitive game there. And then on Sunday, you got a couple solid games. Belpre takes on South Webster. South Webster led by Eli Roberts. Lucasville Valley takes on Federal Hocking. That'll be a good game with Jace Copley for Lucasville Valley going up against the Fedhawk squad that won a district title last year. Tara Cottrell is a name to watch for Fedhawk. Then you got Wheelersburg versus Harvest Prep. Harvest Prep always one of the top Division III teams. I'm not really sure who Wheelersburg has on the basketball court, but they always do such a good job having their top football players also compete on the hardwood. So their teams are just always going to be tough. They're going to be gritty, just a solid program in Southeast Ohio. And then the last game of the night, my second game of the week, Unioto against Proctorville Fairland. Both these teams are 1-0. Unioto beat Miami Trace 55-41. And like I mentioned earlier, Fairland took down North Adams in overtime in their season opening game. So two of the top programs in Southeast Ohio will end the night at Shawnee State. So definitely excited for Saturday at Shawnee State, and currently plan to be back on Sunday as well. So it should be a pretty fun event.
And so to close out this chapter of the show, the game of the week which is my game of the week, I'm not sure how it wasn't your game of the week, St. Clairsville and Martins Ferry opening up on Tuesday night. How is that not your game of the week? I mean, that's a no-brainer. Can't believe you guys did not mention that. That's my game of the week. That's what I'm going to have my eyes locked onto. But, I mean, the games you guys mentioned were good. But, like I said, I was a little surprised that you didn't mention that one. So,
fun fact, those are both two cities that I've actually lived in for a period of time. I lived in both Martins Ferry and St. Clairsville.
Probably shouldn't mention that to too many people.
It was a quick stint. It was from about April to about June. So.
Yeah, that's long enough to get the feeling.
Exactly.
Before we jump into buy and sell, and you guys don't know what this is yet, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to tackle it. The clip that I cut from last week's show, the one about the TJ talking about the 6 or 7 divisions, that tweet has 57,000 views on it. And my major takeaway from that is just it's almost like you put something like that out there and then just let the entertainment roll, and just watch people. Like, the one thing that always stands out to me is like people like get so infuriated by things, and they want all this change, and they want this to happen and that to happen, and then somebody tries to do something to make a change, and then they just blast that. It's like, okay, do you want something like you're like you said last week, TJ? You're never going to please everyone, and I just it's funny to me when an organization or people in leadership try something new, they listen to the people, they want to make a change, and then they do something or throw something out there to see what the feedback is going to be, then people just blast it.
Like someone just blasted your lights out.
Somebody just,
They got the stubs.
Right. When that tweet started to kind of pick up steam on social media, I began to get a lot of texts and calls from coaches from all across the state. One of the common complaints and themes that I was able to pick up from those conversations was the fact that a lot of coaches here in Ohio believe that the OHSAA makes these type of decisions without input from the coaches or from the guys that are actually, boots on the ground. So that seemed to be a pretty big issue that they think a lot of these coaches had no idea that this was one, a possibility, or two, that it was kind of virtually a done deal already. So I would like to just see a lot of us get on the same page, get a lot more feedback from coaches, from media, just on a variety of topics. I think you have a board of guys who are trying to do their best, and no knock on them whatsoever. But I think sometimes just kind of, trying to do things on your own, can kind of, leave a pretty bad impression with the people that actually have to live with those choices on a day-to-day basis.
My biggest thing is it doesn't have to be us versus them or you versus me. It should be everybody, media types, coaches, like OHSA. Everybody should be working together for the betterment of this sport or whatever sport it is that you're like. It doesn't have to, like, they don't have to be the enemy. You don't have to be the enemy. It should be everybody working together to continue to grow a sport that's in flux right now. Like, there's a lot going on, and like as you said, TJ, everybody needs to get on the same page to get this thing going in the right direction.
Yeah, and regardless of your opinions on going to 6 or 7 divisions, whether you agree or disagree with it, I'm personally not in favor. It's still nowhere close as egregious as what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee did to Florida State. So the good thing about Ohio high school basketball, you'll never see a 22-0 team not allowed to play in the playoffs. So we're better than that.
So if we were doing buy and sell right now, Roth is selling the College Football Playoff Committee. Here's what this is just kind of going to be like general. We don't have a ton of stuff yet. So I want to ask you guys, is there any stock right now that you would buy that you didn't currently have after this first weekend, and any stock that you would sell after this current first weekend?
I think in a year where I think I mentioned this last week, where there's not many great teams, particularly in Division I, I think it's pretty wide open in virtually every region. I think you're going to see a lot of familiar faces win a lot of games when there's this much kind of variety or variety. It's kind of hard to go against teams like Gahanna and Newark and St. Ed's, teams that just have elite coaching, great culture. Those teams are going to win a lot more games than people would think on paper in a year where it's just completely up for grabs.
Love it.
I am going to buy Preble Shawnee stock. Not only did Preble Shawnee get a marquee victory, but also their biggest competition to make it to Dayton won't have one of their best players. Wes Enos not with Miami East this season. So I think Preble Shawnee is a stock that you need to buy now, because if you don't have it very soon, I think it's going to be clear that Preble Shawnee might be easily a top 3 to 4 team in Division III and have a really nice path to make it to Dayton.
I like that as well. They got, I think they got 15 points the other night out of their freshman guard. Is it Knox Mills? I think his name is. So that's even more production from what they already had returning. They got the big fella Logan. Is it Holly?
Holly. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely big news. I know Roth like glanced over it pretty quick, but Enos not playing with Miami East this year is a game changer in Division III, not only down that way, but in the state in general. I mean, that was one of the top 5 teams in Ohio returning. And they're still going to be a really solid team. They played Dayton CJ pretty tough down at Mason. But you lose a player of Enos's caliber, and that's going to, at Division III level, that's going to be a huge hit. And team that I'm not selling anybody at this point. I think in a year like this, it would be crazy to sell any stock right now. I think as the year goes on, we'll revisit this question and we might get rid of some of that stock, some bad purchases. But right now, a team that I am going to buy some stock in, I'm not doing anything crazy, but I'm going to buy a little bit of stock in Pandora Gilboa in Division IV. This is a team that slipped past me. 18-5 a year ago, lost to Delphi St. John's in a close game, sectional final. They have their top 3 scorers back. Aiden Harris, Colin Harris is a really good 1-2 combo for them. Keep an eye on Pandora Gilboa up in that Blanchard Valley Conference this year. Gonna dabble in a little stock. I believe they are the Rockets. So I'm going to dabble in a little stock from them. So that's what we're buying this week. We'll see if we want to sell anything next week. We're going to finish.
I had to look up where that school was. I was curious when you were talking about them.
Yeah, we're going to finish the show here with a couple things. We're going to do our alumni spotlight. Each of us have a few things in this section. And then really quickly, we're going to give our state championship picks. We started this last week. I don't want to get into what happened at the end, but let's just say I turned the ball over with 5 seconds to go. We were down 1, and I dribbled it off my foot, and the show ended. So, alumni spotlight. Roth, I will give you center stage here. This is your baby. Go ahead and get us started.
Awesome. Yeah, really excited about this segment, just to, like I said in the opening episode, show some love to some kids that we watched grow as high schoolers and are now doing their thing at the college level. So my Division I player of the week is Matt Alaco from Hilliard Bradley. He's at Princeton, and Princeton is unbeaten at 8-0. Alaco had a game-winning 3-pointer to beat Furman. He's scoring 17.5 points per game, shooting 50% from 3-point range. And my small college alumni spotlight player of the week is Javon Moffmer from Chillicothe. He plays at Cedarville. I actually attended the Cedarville versus Ohio Dominican game where Cedarville kind of rolled, and then Moffmer scored 26 points on 11 for 15 shooting in a road win over Thomas More. So Cedarville is 2-0 in GMAC play. It was great to go out to a game at Cedarville on Tuesday night and just experience the atmosphere that they had. Actually, maybe it was Thursday night. I'm getting my dates confused. But good games for Cedarville this week, and a team to watch in the GMAC, which is a league that we're going to be hearing about from one of you in the small college player of the week as well.
Yeah, I'm actually going to show some love to Roth's OU Bobcats here. This was a kid that coincidentally I tweeted about a week ago after he had another big game. Was a Brush alumni, Elmore James. He actually won co-player of the week this week in the MAC. He had two big wins over Delaware and Brown. He scored a combined 39 points, grabbed 13 rebounds in those two wins. And my thing with Elmore, we speak a lot about, what kids do on the floor. I just want to show some love to this kid and his character. My first impression of Elmore, he was a freshman. He came to an open gym that I was doing in Warrensville Heights. And usually when you get done with events, people come up to you, talk to you, coaches, just kind of spitball back and forth, And I see this kid just kind of standing over on the side. He waited probably about 5 or 6 minutes or so for me to finish up these conversations. And he walked up, man, he looked me dead in the eyes, he shook my hand, and he thanked me for inviting him to the event. And at that age, the kid was just a freshman at that time. That's so rare in today's climate, and it's so refreshing. And he was a kid that I'm not shocked at all by his success, especially with the staff that he's under with Coach Bowles and company. So definitely wanted to give a huge shout out to Elmore James, who's made a really big jump as a sophomore for the Bobcats. This was a game, I guess it kind of doesn't really count as this week. But last week I was able to go see John Carroll at Baldwin Wallace. John Carroll's currently ranked. I'm not sure if the new poll is out yet, but last week they were number 3 in the country. Absolutely loaded Division III roster. And I think a guy who is arguably one of the top Division III players in the country, just from a pure talent standpoint, is Luke Frazier, who's been a bit of a journeyman, started his career at Dayton, transferred and walked on at OU, and is now finishing up his career at John Carroll. But in a win over a really young but competitive Baldwin Wallace team, Luke almost had a triple-double, finished with 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. I think just his combination of length, skill, and athleticism at that level is a huge game changer. When he's rolling, and then you got the bigs on the inside with Will Yontek, Henry Rayner, Luca Eller, and then Luke Chacon running the show. John Carroll is a lot of fun to watch. Definitely a team that I'm going to try and see multiple times throughout the year. So Elmore James, Luke Frazier, those would be my 2 picks for the Alumni Spotlight this week.
Yeah, Roth. The more I thought about this, I love this segment that you came up with, and I'm going to go with a player and a team. So for me, Kobe Mitchell, a kid that spent his first year at Akron, didn't play a whole lot, but bumped down to Walsh University, and he is off to a really good start up there, averaging about 18 a game, 6 rebounds, shooting 81% from the line, 45% from 3. They're 4-1, only losses to unbeaten Ashland. So Kobe is a guy that bumped down, probably bumped to the level where he could probably have the most success. I think if he stays at Akron, he's probably a guy that gets in the mix at some point and is a contributor. But I think he has the ability to be a first-team all-conference guy, and really probably, if he stays at that level, could be a national D2 name before it's all said and done. The way he can score the ball. There's no doubt about it.
And I think he's a perfect complement to Garrison Kiesler, who's without a doubt one of the top players in the GMAC. But I think the way those two guys are able to play off each other, with Kobe's ability to spot up and catch and shoot, and Garrison's ability to just really see the floor at an elite level and make plays. I think that was a huge pickup for Walsh, and like I said, a team that's been playing really well so far to start.
Yeah, if you know Kobe, it's probably more of his personality, just a quiet kid. That D2 level is probably just a better fit for him in general. And then the team that they lost to, Ashland, is the team I wanted to mention. They're off to a 6-0 start. Coach Ellenwood has been Coach of the Week 2 weeks already. They're 6-0. Simon Wheeler, sophomore guard out of the Detroit area, is playing extremely well. Then you look at some Ohio guys like Brandon Haraway, Maceo Williams, Travell Adams. So this is a roster stocked full of Ohio high school kids, along with Wheeler from the Detroit area. I think he played some high school ball out in the Phoenix area as well. So keep an eye on Ashland. They're playing really good basketball right now, really talented team.
And Victor Searles is another Ohio, and so he obviously, when he was a senior, received a lot of interest, at a variety of levels, whether it was D3, NAI, some D2s that came around. And he's a kid who's just been a testament of work. I mean, really transformed his body. I think if you guys were to see him athletically right now, it's a huge difference, from the kid that we saw at St. Charles.
Yeah.
So, him combined with Maceo Williams and Stefan Stanich and all the guards that you just mentioned, this is a very deep and talented Ashland team.
So I can't wait to kind of follow this throughout the week. Now it gives me more incentive to keep up with those guys at the NAI D3 D2 level. I mean most of us have a pretty good ear on the D1 stuff just from the people we talk to and things we see. But let's finish this show with our picks. D1, D2, D3, D4. We're just going to pick winners, and as I mentioned last week, we definitely have the ability to change these at any time, because when the dust settles, we are going to be right. That's going to be it. On that final Sunday of the season, we are all three going to be 4 for 4 on these picks, and it doesn't matter how we do it. It doesn't matter how we do it. But this is how we're going to start. We're going to start. Each of us are going to give our D4 picks, and I am going to be surprised if any of us say anything different.
Yeah, I think despite the 0-2 start by Richmond Heights, I think they absolutely roll in Division 4. I don't think there's much to talk about there. So, yeah, I'm going with Richmond Heights to win yet again. Will this be the third consecutive year for them?
Yeah, and fourth consecutive year, because they in 21 they lost in the semis to Botkins, who ended up winning. That was a game they could have won as well. But yeah, and actually I take that back. They were there 2020. We didn't have a tournament, but 2019 they were up on Convoy Crestview in a semifinal game that year as well. Before Crestview ended up winning that game and then winning the state championship. So we're looking at 5 years in a row now that they could be at the state tournament under Coach Q. I think we're all on the same page there. Newport and Reynoldsburg will not be in the D4 semifinals, so that's not going to be the case. All right, D3 is, I think we're really torn here. So Roth, I think you have a solid pick. So go ahead and give it to us.
I rode with Lutheran East in the preseason episode. No reason to change now. I won't be changing. I feel good about my picks right now. I think most of my teams have played 1 or 2 games. We're full steam ahead.
TJ, what's it going to be, man?
Man, so I am absolutely torn between Ottawa Glendorf and Lutheran East. I just think the performances that Lutheran East put on this weekend makes it very, very difficult to go against them. But I got to stick to my guns, man. I'm not going to turn my back on Coach McLaughlin and my guy Colin White over there at OG. So I think this is the year that Ottawa Glendorf gets it done. Fingers crossed.
All right, Anthony Jones, go ahead and turn off the show because you're going to hate this. I am going to pick Lutheran East. I just think listen, I was dumb and didn't pick them last year. I just think McCullough's size, and if that guard play continues to stay at the level it is, and the freshman is going to have some ups and downs, but he's going to have a lot of experience under his belt against some really good teams by the time they get to the tournament. I just think McCullough, just there's no answer for him if he can stay out of foul trouble if they end up playing an OG. Like, the big kid that they had last year, Theo Mag, I mean, he was at least able to provide some resistance with his length and some of his size. But I just think that size of Lutheran East with McCullough is going to be the difference, and I'm going to take Lutheran East in D3.
D2 is another one where I was kind of stuck between two teams.
Yeah, I know who you were leaning. I know who you were torn there.
Yeah, so Lutheran West and Kettering Altar were my top two picks. But I'm going to go with Lutheran West in this one. That is not my Northeast Ohio bias talking. I just think they get it done. I think they have too many pieces. I think when it comes down to the tournament, guard play wins you games. And with Jason Levis and Derek Fairley, they check that box. And it wasn't either one of their best games last night against Brush. They still managed to win. But I thought Derek Fairley was sensational on the defensive end. An absolute ball hawk, guy who just competes, and he's long. He gets so many deflections and strips, and he's going to sit down and he's going to guard. And I think you combine that with a lot of the other pieces they have. They got size, they got guys that can make shots, they got guys that can make plays, they can defend. I'm going to give Lutheran West a slight edge over Kettering Altar as my Division II pick.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Lutheran West. TJ said Northeast Ohio bias. You don't need bias when you win. Northeast Ohio swept last year. We're sweeping it again. Lutheran West, all the way. I feel sick saying that as a Fairview alum.
All right, Roth, I'm gonna challenge you a bit here because you're talking about the Northeast Ohio bias, and I agree with you that there is Northeast Ohio bias, and rightfully so. They won all 4 state championships last year, and heck, they just cashed in on 5 out of the 7 state football championships. So the sports world is ruled by Northeast Ohio right now in the Buckeye State. So listen, Zach Fleer right now, when he listens to this, he's going to be throwing, he's going to slam his monitor. But it is what it is. And, I said I was going to challenge you, Roth, because I feel like you're a guy that believes that there's SEC bias in football. And there is, because they run the show. And that's why the Alabama Crimson Tide are in that championship, or in that Final Four. I digress. I'm going to pick Trotwood Madison to win D2. I'm coming out of nowhere. Let's just spice this show up. Pete Poulin, let's go. Let's get this done. Rams.
They will have a exceptional crowd if they make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm all in. Let's go, Pete Poulin.
Stubbs might be cheering from press row.
Trotwood Madison. If you guys remember, and I don't know if you guys remember this, you may not have been like in that area. Last year I got called on the carpet because on one of those replays in the I think it was the Lutheran West game, they were showing the replay on TV, and I see the replay in front of me because the monitor's right in front of me. So I see that it like what clearly happened. So I'm looking at these guys in the crowd and I'm like, no, it's no good. And they see me on TV doing that. And Tim comes down and is like, hey, man, you can't be doing that on press row. And so I'm waving it off from press row because I can see the monitor, but apparently that's against media. They kind of frown upon that, I guess. But I was just, I was hyped up. All right, Division I. What do we got?
My pick last week before we got cut off was St. Ignatius, and I'm sticking to it. I think like Coach Joyce. I think Coach Joyce figures it out. They've been down there, I believe, this would be 4 consecutive years, right? If I'm not mistaken. Well, I guess we
they
didn't
weren't
have
there last year.
Yeah, they weren't there last year.
Yeah, that is right. Lost to Garfield Heights, and then Toledo St. John came out. But I do think they get it done. I think it's a great story. A team that lost a few key pieces, due to transfer. You got Ace Buckner going to La Lumiere, Carter Jackson at Garfield Heights, CJ Little, who went to Garfield Heights a year prior. This team is still loaded with college level talent. I think they get it done. I think junior guard Quinn Wilkie is a kid who a lot of people in Northeast Ohio aren't familiar with. Just due to injury, missing virtually the entire season last year as a sophomore. But if you keep up with grassroots basketball, just how impressive and how fearless this kid is. I think he's going to put on a show in the Cleveland area. And then you got Damon Fryery, who's one of the best juniors in Ohio. Senior guard Jack Saponik, who's one of my sleeper kids in the area. Matt Ellis, Sam Springer, Reese Robinson. I mean, the list goes on and on of guys that can just make plays and pick up the slack when needed. I'm going to go with Coach Cam Joyce and the St. Ignatius Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Wildcats. I saw Coach Hassinger of Medina at the Cleveland Basketball Classic as they took a tough loss to St. Ignatius in their season opening game. And I think that just shows the talent that Ignatius has, that they were able to roll. And Coach Hassinger is still in a good mood at Medina. I think they're going to have a good season, but the fact that Ignatius was so dominant against a pretty formidable opponent in their season opening game, that shows that they're going to be a tough out this year. So sticking with my Northeast Ohio ties, baby.
Yeah, I love the St. Ignatius picks. Sometimes you get addition by subtraction, and I don't mean that the guys that left there were a problem or anything like that. It just those might have been better situations that those guys left to go to. I don't know. They would have to evaluate themselves, but this might be a team that can get Coach Joyce over the top and get him that state championship that his father has done so many times. I think Centerville is another team that, is this one where, being this wide open, I feel like coaching is going to be a big deal. And TJ, you mentioned it earlier, culture. Does anybody have a better culture than Centerville? Brooke Cups is just, he's a wizard. So I feel like they're a team that is going to be right there when the dust settles. So I could see Centerville. I could see Cleveland St. Ignatius. Those are definitely two teams that I could see standing on that last game on Sunday. I'm going to go being that this is a crazy year, I'm going to go completely out and left field here. And you guys are probably going to fry me for this. We talked about coaching, and I think this guy's a great coach. I think he's a great motivator. I think he's got a lot of experience back, a lot of versatile guys. I'm going to go with the Mentor Cardinals. Bob Krasancic, out of nowhere.
I think there are probably 6 to 8 teams in Northeast Ohio Division I that I think can realistically make the Final Four. I think Mentor would have to be one of them. I think Brunswick, which we talked about earlier, is a big sleeper. Garfield Heights is without a doubt one of the most talented teams in the state on paper. Coach Sonny Johnson's got a plethora of guys over there, including a freshman class that he told me last night might be his best freshman class since he's been there. I'm sure he said that more than once. But
anybody that listens,
I think they're a team that could make it. Mentor absolutely has to be in the conversation, along with St. Ignatius, which we obviously picked earlier. So yeah, I don't think it's too crazy. Back in 2021, I don't think anyone would have picked Westerville Central.
Right.
That was another crazy year, and I think we're in for something very similar. I think the tournament this year might be as crazy as it's been in the last few seasons.
Well, gentlemen, it's been fun. We'll do it again, God willing, same time next week. Follow Mike over there at Prep Hoops Ohio. They're doing amazing work over there. TJ at NEO Spotlight, both two of the best in the business. You can follow me at Ohio HS Hoops. Until next week, we're out.
See you.